of what we did next week, of what we did last week, so we can link it up to the study of today. So if you recall, we studied data quality, integrity, stewardship, and ethical collection. Over there, we learned and were told that data quality is an ethical issue. Incomplete, inaccurate, or biased data can cause direct harm to real people. We saw several case studies regarding that. We looked at the 6 quality dimensions of data, namely accuracy, completeness, consistency, timeliness, validity. Data must be able to be validated. We also saw governance, access controls, audit trails as components of data integrity. Next, we were able to look at data stewardship, where we were able to distribute responsibilities across data owners, stewards, custodians, and privacy officers. Finally, we looked at how to categorize sensitive data, and we all learned that it required heightened protection, and defaulters should always not collect data unless absolutely necessary. We have been resounding that in all our classes. Do not collect much data than what you need. Today we'll be looking at a very interesting area. We'll be touching on data security, risk management, and ethical use of data collection. And as usual, this week we'll be covering this week we'll be making a connection that most of us usually miss. And that is to say that data security is not really a technical discipline, but it is an ethical obligation. When we collect data from people, we are promising ourselves, we are making a promise that the data would be used only for the purpose it was agreed to. And it must be protected from those who would harm the citizens with it. In the week 6 of these lectures, we should be aware by now that every security failure is a broken promise which we have made to the respondents of our data collection. We'll be looking at a very important case study in form of a video, the Equifax breach. And most importantly, we should always leave the financial obligation, the financial loss, but we should always look. For instance, the Equifax breach cost the company $1.38 billion, but that is not a major concern. Our concern is that it compromised the financial integrity of 147.9 million Americans who actually had no choice whether Equifax held their data or not. And as we proceed in the course, please watch the recorded videos. We have put in the required videos in the required studies. We have put in a lot of materials for you to study. As usual, we have to participate in the discussional forum and reply to at least 2 classmates. Then we submit a reflective journal. For this week, we are not having a quiz, but our assessment would be in form of an assignment, in form of a case study assignment, which you must research. And please, let's note this. The LMS has been equipped with plagiarism checks. So we expect us to adopt originality in our assignment. Please, let's note that, because the system is going to check your work for plagiarism. We are going to look at data security as an ethical obligation. We'll be seeing various threat landscapes. We are going to see design of privacy. We'll look at risk management frameworks, ethical use of big data. Then, just like the video we watched before now, we'll be looking at a case study. Security is not just technical, but it is ethical. Security does not lie with the technical guys in the IT unit, but it lies and begins with us, That's the respondents and the owners of the data. The data managers in various organizations. Security lies with us. It begins with us and it ends with us. Please, let's note that. Let's note that. Let's note that. We have what we call the CIA triad. In this course of this week, we are combining some aspects of cybersecurity to data security and data science. So in cybersecurity, we have what is called the CIA triad, which is CIA, not the user CIA, the CIA in data science and cybersecurity, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability is what we call the CIA triad. Confidentiality simply refers, and it means that data is accessible to only authorized individuals. So I've looked at this from the week one of this course, only to authorized systems and only to authorized processes. Collecting data creates a duty to protect that same data from unauthorized access. Failure to protect it harms the people who owns those data. What is integrity? Integrity means that data must be accurate, data must be complete, and data must not be altered or tampered with. What is the reason? Last week, we looked at the implication of this in healthcare. When we are collecting data for drug manufacturing and we are biased in the data collection tool, we are taking more of the data from the white in order to make decisions for the black, or taking more from the black to make decisions for the white. What is the implication? The drug that will be produced is going to give some unhealthy results to the patients. Data must be accurate, data must be complete, and data must not be altered must not be altered. One very key aspect of data is availability. Every data that has been collected must be accessible to authorized users when needed. Every data collected must be accessible to authorized users as at when needed. Take a typical case study. You have collected data from patients on their blood group and their genotype. A doctor is in the operating theater and the patient is losing blood in a very fast way, and you need access to know the blood type of the patient. Now, by the design of your system, they are putting several locks. Probably you put in a lock whereby if a data on a patient's blood type and blood group is meant to be accessed, an OTP code will have to be sent to a particular email address. Forgetting that probably in the operating theater, access to internet has been disabled, probably due to interference with the systems. That has now affected availability of critical data because the medical doctor have now asked for access to the blood sample. A code has been sent to an email and the email is not accessible because internet access has been disabled in the operating theater. It will lead to loss of that patient's life. So we should know that when designing our systems, in as much as we are trying to make sure that data is secure, data is made confidential, and we're also ensuring integrity of data, we must also note that data must be available as at when needed to authorize users. Meaning in the design of systems, we must take all this into consideration. We have a lot of threats. Now we are looking at several threat landscapes. We have the data breaches. We have the ransomware attacks. In cybersecurity, ransomware refers to attacks that occur and they are now required to pay some sort of money in order for you to access those data. Take, for instance, I am lecturing in class right now and suddenly my system goes blank. I've had a cyber attack on my system. I tried to put on the system and on my screen is displayed pay this amount of money to a Bitcoin wallet. That is ransomware attack. Ransomware means that malware has encrypted organizations' data and payment for ransom is being determined. Very, very common is what we call insider threats. In fact, 60% of data breaches occur through insider access. Insider access has to do with errors or mistakes caused by employees, contractors, or partners who misuse authorized access to data, either maliciously or through negligence. Let me give a very, very popular and typical example. A company that fails to hold what we call frequent weekly briefing on security would eventually pay the supreme cost. For instance, I work in the banking sector. I work in a bank, and we have what is called a strong room where my data or my server computers reside in the bank. By the design of the bank, a visitor can just walk on from the gates and go into the data center of the bank. In fact, not all staff have access to the data center of the bank. But it is very likely and very possible that a cleaner or a casual staff could have access to that area of the bank. Why? Cleaning needs to be performed in one way or the other. Some things need to be carried out. If the bank don't do frequent briefing to all staff on security, or maybe whenever you are doing your weekly security brief, you leave out some certain set of staff from those briefs, what do you think can happen? The insider could be contacted by an outsider who intends causing harm to the bank and probably is exploited and is given what we call a common flash drive, which we all know, with a set of instructions. When next you are going for cleaning, help me insert this flash on the flash disk on a particular system in the server room. Now, the casual staff may not know the effects that will be caused due to what is told by the attacker. And it does that. That room cannot be accessed ordinarily by any staff, but is accessed by the casual staff by his access. And by not being part of the weekly briefing, it does that instruction. What is the resultant effect? That flash may contain a malware. The malware now could exfiltrate data or give a backdoor access to the attackers to the bank system. How would have it been avoided? Simply 10 minutes of briefing to all staff on the threat landscape would have solved that entire issue. The briefing not done is costing the bank lots and lots of money, and most importantly, bank's data has been compromised, staff's data have been compromised, customers' data have been compromised. We also have what is called supply chain attacks. Supply chain attacks. Supply chain occurs when attackers compromise a trusted vendor to gain access to the organization. Let's take, for instance, the organization have vendors that services, let's say the electricals, electronics, the venting system, the HVAC system, that is the cooling system. The attacker could decide to pass through those vendors and steal an access card. The access card that has been stolen could now be used to gain authorized, in this case, not unauthorized, but authorized access to the organization's data simultaneously. That is what we call a supply chain attack. And we being aware of this form of attacks will now help us in a design of a security landscape in our organization. Let's now look at privacy of data. How do we design privacy of data? We have foundational principles. In my slide, I group it up to 7. Number 1, we must be proactive. We must be proactive. If you notice, I keep on playing videos of case studies in all our classes from week one. Why am I doing that? So that you will learn how to be proactive based on previous experience. Now that you have gained this knowledge, what can you do to help your organization? You must be proactive, not reactive. Proactive means that anticipate that you can be attacked. Proactive means that it is not a question of can I be attacked? It is a question of when I am attacked, am I prepared? It is a question of if I am breached, how can I roll back the effects? Proactive, not reactive. Privacy must be enabled by default. Users should automatically get the highest level of privacy. Privacy must not be opted into. You shouldn't ask users, should we or should we not protect your data? No. Privacy by default should be set for every form of user collected data in an organization. Privacy must be built into design and architecture of system. It must not be an afterfact. Privacy and security must be achieved together. In fact, now there's what we call end-to-end security. We looked at that 2 weeks ago. That is from when we looked at the entire data cycle life cycle from collection up to disposal. There must be end-to-end security. Security should not just be employed when you are collecting data. Then at the point of disposing of data, you simply carry probably the hard disk of the company and dump into the waste bin. Remember, I talked us about dumpster attack. Dumpster attack means that I go fishing to the waste bin or the disposal firm of the company. I go fishing for data because I know that in disposal of your data, you have weak security policies. So I go fishing for your data in your waste disposal system and I get all the data I need. Privacy by design. One principle is that data all stakeholders must see and verify the data practices that exist in the organization. There's what we also call the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. This is actually the US standard for cybersecurity risk assessments. And that framework that we are looking at was developed in the year 2024, and it provides an approach for managing cybersecurity risks. Number one, govern. Number two, you must identify your organizational assets. Number three, we must implement safeguards to limit. There are two things involved. If we can't limit events, cybersecurity attacks from happening, data attacks from happening, we should be able to develop systems to contain the event when it occurs. What do I mean by that? When there is a breach in data, have you developed a system in place? Is there a reporting officer? Is there a responsibility officer? When you discover that your email has been breached, what should be your next call of action? Should you notify or should you just delete that email and assume it doesn't happen? Or should you notify the IT officer or the IT security officer? We must be able to develop and implement activities that are able to identify cybersecurity events in a timely manner. We must be able to develop what we call security operation centers and develop procedures that could always scan in your company's network, that could always scan your company's emails, that could always scan data protection systems to check if there's any likelihood of attack. Now, importantly, we must be ready to take action when an incident occurs, and the action must be fast and timely. Containment, analysis, mitigation, and communication. It is not all about when an attack has occurred, how can we rectify the issue? Rectifying the issue must be how can we contain the attack to avoid widespread. Now, when you have contained the attack, you must be able to analyze the attack. Analyzing the attack means that let's even know what actually led to this attack. What led to the attack? What can we do to avoid this attack from happening in future? That is what we call contain analysis. After when we have done the analysis, the next stage is mitigation. How can we safeguard this attack from happening? Then, very importantly, how do we communicate to staff? How do we communicate to stakeholders? How do we communicate to shareholders? How do we communicate to the public? Yes, we have been attacked, but in as much as we have been attacked, these are the steps that the company have taken to make sure that this does not occur in future. The next thing, how do we recover services that have been impeded? Data has been lost, data have been breached. What recovery capabilities have we put in place for future sake? Now, in the world of today, we have what is called big data. Big data, data is being gathered every day, like we have seen from our traffic. By being online, the more we procure dashboards, accessories, mobile phones. In our vehicle, we are procuring dash cameras, we are on GPS, email, Facebook, WhatsApp, all sort of your data is being collected every day. In fact, now the more you interact, we must be careful and we must be warned. The more we interact with what we call AI platforms, the more our data is being collected. And the data is being used for current analysis and future analysis. The more you go to AI asking for assistance, asking for help, the more you are discussing with, some of us, you discuss with AI about your life, asking the artificial intelligence system to advise you, the more data is being created. Big data enables insight and unprecedented harm. And big data helps to predict analysis. It identifies pattern. But what must we do? There must be ethical limits to the use of big data. Like we heard in the video I played, these data are being collected by organizations to build detailed behavioral profiles and analysis. Those profiles now are used to make decisions without our consent. We are talking about CCTV cameras. It is very easy to tell the government, let's install CCTV cameras on all our streets, all our cities. What do you know about those cameras? Now, those cameras, some of them have facial detection capabilities. Yes, we feel that the government will use these cameras to safeguard and prevent crimes. But what we don't know is that some of these high-tech systems, they're equipped to study even our facial responses to events. And studying those profiles could now be used by the attackers. Once this big data has been acquired over time, whoever is the custodian of data is actually hot cake for the cyber criminals. Because once those data is harvested, it could be used for several activities. Now we also look at surveillance capitalism. Data is power. In fact, in the 21st century, data is the new gold. Data mining is the new gold. And when we are talking about surveillance capitalism, it is actually the act of claiming private human experience as free raw materials. We are saying that whatever data we are getting, it is raw material. It is raw material for our use. We are claiming ownership to data. Users generate data, companies collect the data, algorithms process the data. The data is now used to predict products sold to advertisers. The cycle goes on and on and on. And you must know that as this data is being collected, we are actually not the customers, but we are the raw materials. Now, as students as this class, how does this affect us? Getting knowledge of this information, you should now be able to design systems that will make sure that big data or data being collected is utilized and analyzed in a very safe way that will not be injurious to your subject. Knowing that data can be used to detect behavioral modifications, you should know that the data collected was collected with consent by the respondent. You now ask yourself, did you tell the respondents that their data will be shared with election bodies? Did you tell the respondent that data collected will be shared with advertising agencies? Did you tell them as a bank when you are collecting data from your citizens, did you allow your customers to know that the data you are collecting, you are sharing it with third-party organizations and it will be used to profile the customers? You didn't do that. If you didn't do that, that means the data being collected, the use is actually wrong and you could be sued. Remember the case of Cambridge Analytica. Facebook collected your data. Cambridge Analytica built a game on top of Facebook. What was that game? Just log in to play a game. Maybe it is a car racing game. But in creating an account to play the game, you are being asked for your address, your zip code, your location, your full names, and your race. Those information was now sold to the campaigners, to the political parties. Was that right? It wasn't right. Remember the case of WhatsApp. We have talked about Facebook and WhatsApp. Facebook said they have our privacy in mind. Why is it that whenever I'm chatting with a friend on my WhatsApp account and I'm telling my friend I need to purchase a wristwatch, when I visit Instagram, all I am seeing as adverts are samples of wristwatches that are on sale? Why is that so? Why will I be discussing with someone on my Facebook? Maybe I'm doing a Facebook Messenger chat and I'm discussing on a vehicle and I check my Facebook advert and I'm seeing that same vehicle being advertised. But you told me that my privacy is at hand, is of topmost priority. Facebook comes back to tell you that by using our suite of products, you have actually handed over your privacy to me. Remember week 2, we now said, what is now the area of consent? How does consent now come in? If we say no, we don't want our information to be shared, what is the resultant effect? We will now be barred from using Meta's suite of services. By implication, the customers don't actually have a right. The right you claim we have is actually not a right because it is almost a permissive right that we have. Our case study, we are going to look at the Equifax data breach. Before I play the video, I'll just throw a little light on that. This happened in 2017. Attackers exploited an unpatched vulnerability in Equifax online dispute portal. This breach ran undetected for 76 days from May to July 2017, and personal data of 147.9 million Americans were stolen. That is their names, the social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, license number, credit card. What was the failure? It came as a result of governance failures. An internal audit was conducted which identified backlogs of unresolved security vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities were discovered and it was not attended to. Why? We have not been attacked. We have never been attacked. And let me tell us something about cyber attacks. For the mere fact that the attackers have not gone public to state that the organization has been attacked does not overrule the fact that you are under cyber attack. In a particular country, I wouldn't state the country, about 3 weeks ago, a particular payment system that the government uses to process payments of all federal government workers was attacked. Was the attack direct? No. It was a third-party attack. A bank was actually attacked, but the target was not the bank. The target was this system that was being used to process payments by the government. The bank was only used as a loophole, as an insider to attack that system. Now, the bank was latched to that payment system and the bank was not patching up the threat. The attack now went on for several months undetected. Finally, the end result, customers' data was exfiltrated and the government payment system was affected. I'm telling us this, you may be under attack, but you may not know. You must now engage organizations to perform vulnerability studies, to perform insider threat analysis, the ethical values. Let's look at the ethical failures. Four senior executives sold $1.8 million in stock after the breach was internally discovered, but before public disclosure. This company actually knew that an attack occurred and they now manipulated the process to their own advantage. I'm going to pause, and before we take questions, I'm going to play the video of the attack. Let's learn one or two things from the attack that occurred.
Well, first you should always ask when someone asks you joining a gym, I need your social security number. For what reason? What's the purpose of asking me for my social security number? They don't need it. Actually, by law, when you look up the law involving your social security number, it's limited to about as many things you can count on one hand, where you legally have to provide it for income taxes, law enforcement, things of that nature. So there's no need for them to have that. They're kind of foolish taking it to begin with, because then they're responsible for that information and they have to try to keep that information safe. In the case of Equifax, which is a perfect example, here is a multi-billion-dollar company. They didn't update their software. They didn't fix their patches that Microsoft said to them and said, install these security patches. Their chief information security officer had her degree in music. She really didn't know anything about keeping information safe, and consequently hackers got in. Now, in my 43-year career, I've dealt with every breach back to TJ Maxx 15 years ago to the recent breach of Capital One, Marriott Hotels, and Facebook. What I've realized in every single breach happens because somebody in that company did something they weren't supposed to do, or somebody in that company failed to do something they were supposed to do. Hackers don't cause breaches, people do. All hackers do is look for open doors, and every day there are thousands of companies with open doors. So I was asked this earlier today, and I firmly believe it. If I give you my information, whether you be a bank, a credit bureau, a hospital, I'm entrusting you with my personal data. If something happens with that data due to your fault or your negligence in keeping it safe, I should have the right to a recourse to sue you for getting my information out. Because now that they don't have that as a statute, companies get away with it and they tell you, I'll buy you 1 year of credit monitoring service, 2 years of credit monitoring service. That's worthless. If I steal your name, your social security number, and your date of birth, you can't change your name. You can't change your social security number. You can't change your date of birth. So if I'm smart, I'm going to hold that data for at least 3 to 4 years before I ever go use it. But if I steal credit card numbers and debit card numbers, I have to get rid of them right away. They have a very short shelf life. But when they do a major breach, they store that data, typically we find from about 4 to 5 years. So you giving me 1 year of credit monitoring, 2 years of credit monitoring, 3 years of credit monitoring, really is not going to help me at all in the long run. It will eventually get to my data and use my data. So I do think that companies need to do a better job of protecting the information that's been entrusted to them. And this is why I was so big on trying to get the ability to freeze your credit. No one in this country ever said to Equifax, you know what? You can store all my personal data and you can make billions of dollars selling it for background checks, employee checks, credit checks. No, I never said that. So what I want to say is, Equifax, you can keep my data, but you cannot show it to anyone without my consent. And if for some reason it gets in the wrong hand, I have the recourse to come back on you because you put me in jeopardy. And that's how it should be.
Okay, so thank you very much. So let's note this. Equifax knew about the vulnerability. They had the patch. They choose not to apply it. I'll give us another example. There's a company we never knew existed called CrowdStrike. If some of us recall last year, there was a period when airlines and banks shut down. And why did they shut down? It was because an organization refused to follow the rules book. The organization is called CrowdStrike. Now, in software development lifecycle, there's actually a process. When you develop any updates for a software, you must go through a process of testing in a controlled environment, which we sometimes call a sandbox. But it so happened that over time, due to probably overconfidence, and we have been doing this and nothing has happened, the software developers developed a patch. A patch means an update to a software, just like when you go to a Play Store and you see update this software. That updating is actually providing a new feature or solving of a vulnerability. So the software was produced, the patch was produced, and the developer simply boycotted the testing environment and moved it straight to live production. What was the effect? There was a flaw in the software that immediately caused thousands of computer systems across the world to shut down. They saw what we call a Microsoft blue screen of death. Flights were cancelled, banks couldn't operate, airlines couldn't operate, billboards. In fact, what we call the Internet of Things of today, sometimes it's very risky. The more we envisage a fully connected one world, there are consequences of this nature. A single update caused by inability to follow the laid down procedure cost millions and billions of dollars loss worldwide and globally. Systems were shut down, flights were cancelled, and all of that. Like I said, Equifax knew about the vulnerability, but they chose not to patch it. Probably because no issue has been reported, but it now led to loss and theft of companies' data. Now let's discuss. I would now like us to unmute our mic. We have learned a lot. We have talked about risk management, not being about the organization, it's about the people whose data you hold. We have said you must have an asset inventory system, particularly referring to data. You must know exactly what data you hold, where that data is stored, who can access it. We should know this. You cannot actually protect what you haven't mapped. The organization have terabytes and gigabytes of data, and you have not been able to locate the exact folders these data are stored or the exact system. You can't protect it. Having the asset inventory, you must now do a threat and risk assessment. What can go wrong by me having this sort of data? I intend generating millions of patients' data. The next question should be, what can go wrong if this data gets into the wrong hand? From that, you go to risk treatment. For every identified risk, you must be able to accept it, mitigate the risk, and transfer the risk. If possible, you avoid that risk. If you can't avoid it, you must accept the risk and see how you can minimize necessary data. Remember, I always say it in our class, the best risk management decision is often not to collect the data. If you must collect only the data you need for the purpose of which the data is needed. If you don't need to collect people's address, don't collect it. If you don't need the sex of individuals, don't collect it. You must have an incident response plan, and there must be an ongoing monitoring and audit. With this, we are going to pause in the class and let's hear from each and every one of us your thoughts on our studies of today. You have seen several breaches, you have watched the videos. Let's now get our various take home as we approach the end of the class. So the floor is open. As usual, you have to unmute your mic. If you don't unmute your mic, I would have to unpick each and every one of us. So if you have something to say, please just unmute your mic and contribute. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. If I may ask, what industry do you operate in? Hello, Elizabeth. Please, could you assist us? What industry do you actually operate in? Sorry. I say thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, what industry do you operate in? What industry? Okay, okay, okay. Thank you, thank you. Okay, thank you for your thoughts. Quite interesting. Quite interesting. You know, as you gave us the thoughts, I just got thinking if there's a way a system could be developed such that since you say privacy and data security must at least begin from our personal systems, we should probably have a software also to either we should be able to encrypt our folders, our systems, so that if and when, we what is frightening is not if, it is when, so that when eventually you are attacked, what damage or to what extent could your information be accessed, or what sort of information could be accessed? And yeah, what I've said is very needful. First of all, as some system users, for those of us that don't do it, you should now be able to categorize the information on your system. It could be as little as now creating folders and subfolders, putting what should be here in this place, putting what should not be here, then learning simple encryption tools like maybe zipping up your folders, putting passwords, maybe encrypting. There's some softwares off the shelf, BitLocker, and sort of them you can at least encrypt some particular folders so that even if your colleague, we talked about insider threats, and in cybersecurity, spear phishing is real, insider threat is real. Your laptop given to a colleague to watch a movie, to play a game, you are actually exposing your data. So if you must do that, we could tell what you have said and try to now start batch protecting our folder. So thank you very much for that very wonderful insight. I'd love to hear more of that when you fill in your reflective journal on the LMS. Thank you. So any other person willing to contribute to the class? Any other person, please? It could be a question, a contribution, a suggestion, or you are giving us an experience of what you have had. Good evening. Okay, I get your question. Okay, I'll answer it this way. So when we talk about, we are delving into an aspect called cloud computing. So let me first of all, I'll just use a minute to explain what cloud computing is. So in cloud computing, you are not actually referring to cloud like the sky. So what we know as cloud computing is actually a system, a set of systems sitting somewhere. That is what we call cloud. So whenever we hear the word Google Cloud, Amazon Cloud, maybe any kind of cloud, you should just know this. It is just a set of computers sitting somewhere that have been linked together. And all our information as you are browsing here, doing WhatsApp, in fact, want to send a message on your WhatsApp, before it gets to the other party's WhatsApp, It is passing through a computer system sitting in a particular location, which we all call cloud. So by design, those cloud systems or cloud server systems, by their design, they have been designed to the least user account level, so that once there's any issue, the cloud providers should be able to trace to the last detail. If it's not designed that way, they will not usually get the certification to operate a data center, because one of the key qualifications to operate a data center is that you must be able to map. That word mapping, you must be able to map your data to the last kilobyte where it is located. So yes, once customers' records are breached on the major, I'll say it, on major cloud providers, not minor, major cloud providers, they actually know the number of their accounts, but it is actually always underreported. They'll always underreport to an extent so that the public won't come at them. So they know, but it's usually underreported. And sometimes I'll tell us this, the effect is always much more devastating than is being reported. Because imagine a hacker gaining access to an email account. It can be reported that 300 email accounts were accessed or their password were breached. Google will simply send an email to affected parties to please change the password. But you will never see an email telling you that as your email was accessed, your data of 10 years ago, your Google Drive was accessed, your YouTube was accessed, your Google Picture photos. No, they will not be specific. But what you should know is this: whenever an attack has occurred, the effect is always more widespread than reported. So it brings us back to the question when Elizabeth contributed. The cause is both scary and at the same time knowledgeable. What should we do? The answer is sometimes we can do nothing. Are you now going to say, now you have access to this information, all your data would be on your personal laptop? You are not going to share data on the cloud? You can't do that. So you could only start the security from your own self. Like I usually advise people, commonly, when I got this information, I always say this: if you are sending a mail with an attachment, a PDF document, an Excel file, if you consider that attachment sensitive enough, password it. Why do I say so? If you consider it sensitive enough, password it. Why? Because as you send the email to me, maybe you're sending me an invoice, and maybe the invoice is for my eyes only. I could as well hit the forward button on my mail to any other mail or to any other person, which means that that data that you considered private has been thrown to the open. But if I want to say security begins with me, in sending a sensitive email, I password that Excel file and give you the password. So you must, even if you forward my mail unintentionally, the other party won't have access to that file because only me and you have access to that email. Sometimes I always say this: if you must send an attachment, maybe upload it to a cloud platform, password it and share the link, and the link should have an expiry date. So security must begin with you having this information. The more you are more conscious, you now have a meeting with your staff, teach them, and we have like what you call the matrix marketing effect. I teach you, you teach me. We can become safe in our own little way. So at that point, even if the cloud providers tell us that there's a breach, you already have a level of security. Yeah, there's a breach to my email. What is the worst that can happen? All my attachments in my email, they are encrypted, they are password protected. Probably just text will be found. I think that is what can happen. So thank you very much, Akintoye, for that question. Could we have one more person before we end the class? One more person, any question or contribution? Yeah, good evening. Okay, I get your question. The concerns are valid, but for our students that will be following us from week one, we have what is called responsibility parties and action parties. So, how I wish I may not know. In our class here, we have several individuals of various nationalities from several countries. So, the message Mr. Iwinosa is trying to pass across is this: as much as every one of us are in positions to make decisions, it is very possible and it will be very beneficial that if you're in a position where your word carries power, you should be able to create the necessary platforms for this kind of lectures and enlightenments should be given. Remember, like I said it, a 5 minute brief, a 5 minute brief that is not done, a 5 minute brief that is not done in your organization to all concerned staff. You pick out only management staff to hear a brief on security. That 5 minute brief that you left out the security, you left out the CASA workers can cost organizations trillions or terabytes of data and millions of dollars in loss. This message must go around and to everybody. On my own part, in line with Mr. Nosa's question, to every one of us that will probably after this class, you have a need that maybe some of these lectures or an abridged version on data privacy awareness should be given in organizations. Like I've been telling us, we are all open, we are all on the same WhatsApp platform. You could reach out to me via mail, and we'll be very glad to assist your organization to be data compliant and data safe. So, even also, thank you very much. So, I'll take the last question, contribution, or comments so we can end the class for today. Okay, thank you very much. So kindly follow it up with an email to the school. I believe there's a platform for that. So you could kindly follow it up and you are sure to get a response. So thank you very much everyone for attending this class. I believe it was an insightful section. And please let's try to those of us that couldn't contribute in class, let's get to the LMS, put up the discussions, reply to others in the discussional forum. And also, please, our assignments are always very important. Let's try to turn it in on time. Then the reflective journal, you have the opportunity to use the reflective journal to still give out your thoughts. I'll be on the lookout to read your thoughts. And finally, we have 2 more weeks to end this section. And at the last week, we are going to have the main assignments stroke assessment for the course. So thank you and have a lovely day. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Well, first you should always ask when someone asks you joining a gym, I need your social security number. For what reason? What's the purpose of asking me for my social security number? They don't need it. Actually, by law, when you look up the law involving your social security number, it's limited to about as many things you can count on one hand, where you legally have to provide it for income taxes, law enforcement, things of that nature. So there's no need for them to have that. They're kind of foolish taking it to begin with, because then they're responsible for that information and they have to keep